Why was the mountain so quiet right before men died? Snow drifted like static across the Afghan ridges, clinging to stone and gear alike. 8 Navy SEALs pressed low against jagged rock, their silhouettes barely darker than the ice around them. The world had narrowed to breath and heartbeat. Ammunition was almost gone. Radios hissed only with the wind. From the valley came the voices, rough, confident, foreign. Americans, surrender now. The sound bounced off the canyon walls, multiplied by the storm until it felt like an army speaking. Commander Ryan Wilson kept his voice low. Hold your positions. No one fires unless you see the whites. His men nodded, but their eyes told the truth. The math was bad. Ammunition short, numbers worse, and weather closing. It wasn't courage that kept them still. It was discipline, the kind built from every bad day that didn't kill them. Wilson looked over the ridgeline once, scanning the ghost light of snow and shadow. So this is it, he thought. After all the noise, this is how it ends, quiet. Then came the sound that changed everything. Crack! A single shot from somewhere beyond the ridge. It sliced through the wind, precise, surgical. One enemy fighter dropped without a scream, red blooming on white. Another shot followed, then another, each so clean it sounded unreal, like mathematics written in gunfire. Wilson's men froze. No one on his team had fired. "What the hell?" Cooper whispered. "Counter-sniper." "No, that's ours." They couldn't tell, but in the chaos that followed, the impossible happened. The enemy's assault faltered. Men shouted orders in panic. Whoever was out there, unseen, unheard, had turned the tide. Somebody on that ridge was fighting for them. A ghost with perfect aim. Hours earlier, that ghost had been invisible, just another figure trudging through waist-deep snow behind Wilson's column. Dr. Nina Mitchell adjusted the strap of her trauma pack, fogged glasses sliding down her nose. 32 years old, small-framed, soft-spoken. To the SEALs, she looked like baggage, a medic the brass had forced on them. She wore standard-issue fatigues, a Red Cross patch on her arm, and a quiet that didn't fit the noise of war. "Why'd they saddle us with her?" Cooper muttered. "Orders," Martinez answered. "Intel says there might be civilians." Nina heard every word but didn't respond. She learned long ago that silence could be armor. Instead, she offered hand warmers, handed out protein bars, adjusted gear straps, small, forgettable kindnesses that kept her useful. But for those who watched closely, something slipped through the cracks of her disguise. The way her eyes tracked 3 sight lines at once, the automatic precision of her hands when she checked her weapon, the deliberate spacing she kept from every tree, every shadow. Colonel James Sullivan noticed. He was retired now, gray, weathered, the kind of man whose medals meant more to others than to him. But when he saw Nina move, he recognized something older than medicine. That calm, that economy, that ghost rhythm. He'd seen it across 3 continents, in people who didn't officially exist. Classified operatives who lived in darkness so others could live in light. That was why he'd placed her here under Wilson's command, not to heal, to be ready. Wilson hadn't liked it. A Harvard-trained doctor on a hostage rescue doesn't make sense, he'd said. Sullivan only replied, protect her, at all costs. Orders, that was enough. But Wilson wasn't blind. He saw the blank years in her file, 7 of them, labeled only overseas deployment, redacted. He saw the way she flinched not from gunfire but from questions. He saw competence too sharp for comfort. And Nina felt it, his suspicion, the eyes that followed her every quiet motion. What Wilson didn't know, what no one knew, was that the snow in these mountains had a twin in her memory. Bosnia, 1999. A city burning orange under artillery fire. A young woman behind a sniper rifle, lying prone for 11 straight hours. She was Dr. Mitchell then. She was Echo, Phantom Unit's deadliest shot. And the man in her scope was Viktor Dragovich. She'd taken the shot. It hadn't killed him. Moments later, Dragovich's men had found her team. 4 operators' friends wiped out in seconds. She lived only because she was too far away to die with them. Through smoke and screaming metal, she'd seen Dragovich rise bleeding but alive. He looked straight at her through the firelight, smiled, and vanished. Echo died that night. Nina Mitchell came home instead, a doctor now, sworn to heal what she once destroyed. But ghosts don't fade, they wait. At Fort Bragg, weeks before deployment, Commander Wilson confronted her. He stood in the supply room doorway, voice sharp. "Why are you here, doctor? Why would Sullivan fight to put a medic on my team?" Nina kept folding gauze packets with exact, unhurried movements. "Because I'm qualified for high-altitude medical operations." "Your file has 7 blank years," he said, stepping closer. "That's not a doctor's handwork, that's an operator. So I'll ask again, what are you hiding?" She looked up through her fogged lenses. "Is there a question in there, Commander?" He stared a long time, jaw working, before turning away. "If you compromise my mission," he said, "there will be consequences." When he left, she waited until the door clicked shut. Then she unzipped the false compartment in her medic pack. Inside, wrapped in cloth, oiled against the cold, lay the disassembled bones of an M24 sniper rifle. The weapon she'd sworn never to touch again. She hated herself for bringing it. She hated herself more for knowing she'd need it. Training day, dust and smoke and shouting. The team ran combat drills while instructors simulated explosions around them. Nina worked the casualty dummies with calm focus, stitching, packing, checking vitals, until a smoke grenade rolled at her feet. She didn't think, she reacted. Kicked it away before it blinded her position. Kept treating. When the smoke cleared, the range went silent. Martinez whispered, "That wasn't a doctor move." From the observation deck, Wilson and Sullivan shared a look. "Who is she really?" Wilson asked. Sullivan only said, "Someone who might save your life if you let her." That night, Sullivan called Nina into his office. He slid a photograph across the desk, grainy satellite shot, a man stepping into a vehicle. Nina froze. The scar on his neck, the posture. It was Dragovich. "I thought he was dead," she said, voice small. "So did everyone," Sullivan replied. "Now he's working with Taliban elements, manufacturing something we can't let exist." "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you know how he thinks, and because your country needs both the doctor and the sniper." Her throat tightened. "I swore never again." Sullivan's eyes softened. "Then why'd you pack a rifle?" She didn't answer, she didn't need to. He handed her a small drive. "Intel, his movements. When the time comes, don't hesitate." That night, she laid the rifle pieces out on her cot, each one sliding into place with the familiarity of an old prayer. Her father had taught her that accuracy was a gift, but wisdom was knowing when to use it. She prayed she'd remember that part. The next day, Wilson's men tested her at the range. Cooper laughed. "Bet she can't hit a barn." Nina said nothing. She just adjusted her stance. At 100 meters, 3 shots center mass. At 300 meters, same. At 600 meters, beyond the rifle's comfort zone, 1 clean shot. Dead center. The laughter stopped. Even Wilson's suspicion cracked, replaced by something quieter. Respect maybe, fear maybe both. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Martinez asked. Nina just smiled. "My father taught me." Sullivan appeared at her shoulder, holding a small wooden box. Inside was a brass medallion engraved with a compass. "He'd want you to carry this," Sullivan said. "Remember, every skill you have might be needed before this is over." Deployment night. Blackhawk rotors cut the dark, snow spiraling in the downwash. Boots hit the ground hard and cold. Wilson arranged the formation, Nina in the center, where he could watch her. They moved for hours through mountain air that burned the lungs raw. Vehicle tracks led them toward a compound hidden in the teeth of the range. Too neat, too organized. Nina saw it instantly: Russian vehicles, disciplined patrols. She whispered to Wilson, "This intel feels off. The pattern's rehearsed. They're waiting for us." Wilson listened but kept to orders. They had a convoy to intercept, hostages to rescue. No room for ghosts or hunches. At the ravine, they set their ambush. Trucks rolled into sight, headlights cutting the snow. Wilson's command came sharp: "Execute." Explosions shattered the silence. The SEALs boxed the convoy in. For a moment, it felt perfect. Then Nina caught the glint, moonlight off glass. "Sniper!" she screamed. Martinez fell, a bullet through the shoulder. Gunfire erupted from the ridges. The convoy was empty bait. The hills came alive with muzzle flashes. Pinned down, outnumbered, trapped. Nina's hands moved without thought, assembling the M24 she wasn't supposed to have. Through her scope, one enemy sniper, then another dropped clean. But for each she killed, two more rose. And then through smoke, through scope, she saw him. Dragovich, alive, leading them. She centered the crosshairs on his chest. 800 meters, doable. Her finger tightened, then Cooper's voice broke through. "Jackson's hit, we need a medic." She froze. One shot could end this war. One man could die right now. She cursed, lowered the rifle and ran. Blood, breath, hands working faster than thought. She sealed Jackson's wound, stabilized him, dragged him to cover with Cooper. Dragovich lived another hour because she chose life over vengeance. When the shooting slowed, she realized what she'd done: saved a man, let a monster live. Maybe that was the price of being both doctor and ghost. As the storm thickened, Wilson regrouped what was left of his team. "They're herding us north," he said. "Toward the canyon," Nina added. "Kill Box." "Then we move first," Wilson decided. "Caves, go." Nina took overwatch, picking off pursuers, guiding the team through darkness and snow until the world itself felt hollowed out. When they finally collapsed inside a cave, wounded and shaking, Wilson turned to her. "Phantom Echo," he said quietly. She looked back. He'd pieced it together: the blank years, the precision, the ghost rifle. "You were one of them," he said. Nina didn't deny it. Outside, the wind screamed like a thing alive. Inside, silence settled heavy, the kind that comes before history changes. And in that silence, one truth rose clear in her mind. Some ghosts don't haunt battlefields. They protect them. She hadn't meant for the silence to feel like confession. The cave walls swallowed breath, light and fear alike. Outside, the wind screamed through the Afghan teeth, tearing at snow and rock, as if the mountain itself wanted them gone. Inside, the SEALs counted ammo, 2 mags each, maybe less. Martinez unconscious, Jackson half alive, the wounded groaned in the dark. And in the flicker of a headlamp, Commander Wilson's stare fixed on her, calm, sharp, too knowing. "You were Phantom Echo," he said. "It wasn't a question." Nina's gloved hands paused over a bandage. Her eyes lifted once, then fell again. "You think I'd forget that call sign?" Wilson's tone softened, but his gaze didn't. "I read the Bosnia files. Half were redacted, the rest were ghosts, but there was always one name: Echo, the woman who didn't miss." She kept her voice level. "That was a long time ago." "Not long enough." For a few heartbeats, the only sound was the wind trying to climb into the cave. Then she sighed. "You need to understand something. Bosnia didn't end for me. I left bodies, not closure." Wilson crouched beside her, voice low. "And Dragovich." She met his eyes. "He's the body I missed." That landed between them like a shell that didn't explode. Wilson nodded slowly. "So this isn't just another mission to you?" "It's not a mission at all," she said. "It's a correction." From the back of the cave, Cooper's voice cut through the hush. "Commander, we've got movement on thermal. 200 meters and closing." Nina's head snapped up. "They're not retreating, they're pushing." Wilson rose, already loading his weapon. "Then we buy time. Martinez stays here. Jackson too. We hold this cave until extraction or daylight, whichever lies first." The men shifted into formation, each taking a firing angle across the mouth of the cave. Snow filtered through cracks like drifting ash. Nina checked her rifle, the same ghost weapon she'd sworn off. The barrel gleamed cold. The bolt slid like memory. She hated how natural it felt in her hands. Not a medic's hands, she thought, a marksman's. She caught Wilson watching her again. "I'll cover left," she said before he could question. He nodded once, maybe trust, maybe resignation. Then, just as she sighted down the scope, something in her headset crackled alive, a burst of coded static. Not enemy chatter, a signal, one she hadn't heard in years. "Phantom Actual, this is Control," the voice said. "Sullivan." Her breath hitched. "Sir." "You've confirmed Dragovich's presence." "Yes." "Then listen carefully. The hostages are secondary. He's building something far worse. Intel points to weapons-grade uranium. The site is a facade, a front for nuclear assembly." Her throat went dry. "You're telling me?" "Yes," Sullivan interrupted. "The compound isn't a hideout, it's a laboratory." She looked to Wilson, who was scanning the perimeter. He hadn't heard the transmission. It was on an encrypted frequency, one she wasn't supposed to still have access to. "Sir, my team's compromised. We're cut off." "Then hold the position until we can retask air support. But listen, Nina, if you see a chance to end him, you take it. We can't afford another escape." The line clicked dead. Her pulse thudded in her ears. Sullivan hadn't called her doctor. He'd called her by the name that never should have returned. "Phantom Actual." She stared into the snowstorm outside the cave and whispered to herself, "You don't get to be both." Hours passed like exhausted breaths. The storm turned savage, chewing through their comms and visibility alike. Every few minutes, a new burst of small arms fire came from below, probing, testing. Wilson ducked beside her. "They're disciplined, too coordinated for Taliban." "They're not Taliban," Nina said quietly. "They're contractors, Russian-trained. Dragovich likes control." Wilson studied her profile, how calm she was, how still. He saw something in that stillness that scared him more than the enemy did. "You talk like you know him," he said. She didn't answer for a long time, then softly, "I do." His jaw worked, questions building, but before he could speak, a faint shimmer of light flickered across the valley, a signal mirror. Morse. 3 flashes, pause, 3 more. Wilson's radio hissed. "Contact incoming, single operator, friendlies unknown." Nina's heart quickened. Could be a ranger element lost in the storm. "Or bait," Wilson said. He motioned to Cooper, "Eyes on that ridge." Through her scope, Nina saw the silhouette, one man moving with impossible grace for this weather. He wasn't stumbling. He was hunting. Her finger brushed the trigger. "Commander," she said, "whoever that is, he's trained." Wilson thought a moment, then spoke quietly. "Hold your fire. Let's see if ghosts recognize each other." The figure approached, unarmed, hands lifted, calling out through the wind. "Major David Reeves, Delta Force. Authentication code Tango Echo 7. Wilson froze, the code checked. Reeves was real. They pulled him inside. His face was cut from cold, but his eyes were sharp, too sharp to belong to a desperate man. He took one look at Nina, and his expression shifted from surprise to recognition. "Phantom Echo," he said. Nina stiffened. "You're supposed to be dead," Reeves added. "So are you," she replied. Wilson frowned between them. "You two know each other." Reeves shrugged. "We read each other's files back when they still let us." Nina looked at him, reading his posture. He wasn't here for rescue. He was here for Dragovich. And suddenly, the air in the cave felt too small for all their ghosts. The team listened as Reeves unfolded a map on a flat rock, flashlight dimmed under his glove. The compound below us, two main structures, one auxiliary. Heat signatures indicate heavy machinery. Chen's the scientist running their tech. He's alive. Dragovich is using him to build something portable, small yield, big enough to ruin a city block. Wilson leaned over the map. We're not equipped for a raid. Reeves looked up. We won't get another chance. Weather's worsening. Reinforcements can't land until morning. By then, he's gone. Nina studied the contour lines. If we hit from the north ridge, we can breach without tripping thermal. Wilson shook his head, not without leaving the wounded. Then I'll go, she said. Everyone turned. You're not going anywhere alone, Wilson snapped. I'm not asking permission, she said quietly. You have 2 men down, a storm pinning your comms, and a target preparing a nuclear device. You hold this cave. I'll finish what Bosnia started. Cooper muttered, Jesus, she's serious. Reeves smirked faintly. She always is. Wilson exhaled, long and heavy. You go out there, you're on your own. I've been on my own for years, Nina said. Reeves rolled the map, clipped it under his arm. She's right, we move now. Wilson's gaze shifted between them. The doctor he'd never trusted, and the stranger who walked into their hell like it was home. He finally nodded once. You've got 1 hour. If you're not back, we assume you're ghosts again. Nina smiled faintly. Maybe we always were. The storm greeted them like an old enemy. Snow hit their faces sideways, each gust a slap of ice and memory. Reeves moved first, leading by instinct. Nina followed, every step deliberate, eyes scanning the ridge for shadows that weren't wind. The silence between them wasn't awkward, it was old, like people who had once shared too much and didn't need to fill the air anymore. Halfway down the slope, Reeves broke it. I read the after-action on Bosnia, he said. You took the shot. She didn't reply. He lived, Reeves continued. You carried that for a long time. I carried worse, she said. Like what? The idea that maybe mercy was a mistake. He didn't argue. He didn't have to. They both knew the weight of mercy in this business, heavier than any weapon. They reached the compound perimeter. Floodlights burned through the storm in lazy arcs, half swallowed by snow. Beyond the fence, heat shimmered faintly, a generator maybe. Reeves studied the pattern. 2 guards by the gate, 3rd on rotation. Nina's voice was barely audible. I'll take the vent route. You sure? She gave him a look that answered everything. He nodded, lifted the wire for her to crawl under. See you inside, doctor. She smiled once, quick, human, and vanished into the snow. She reached the outbuilding's roof line, breath shallow from cold. The vent grid was iced over, but old training made her fingers steady. She slipped a thin cord under the edge, pried until it gave, then slid inside like smoke. The duct angled down into shadow. Below, voices, 2 guards talking, a mug clinking on metal. The smell of solvents drifted up, sharp and chemical. Through the mesh, she saw him, a thin man in a surgical mask, trembling hands working over a metal cylinder. Dr. Chen. Alive. Nina felt her pulse quicken. She lowered herself through the vent with the care of a surgeon. 2 silent shots later, the guards were gone. Chen froze, eyes wide above his mask. Dr. Chen, she whispered, weapon steady. We're here to take you home. He shook his head. You can't move me yet. If I leave the bench like this, the trigger geometry. Safe state? Reeves asked, appearing from the shadows behind her. 20 seconds, Chen said, hands shaking. Then we can go. Reeves nodded. Make it 15. The seconds crawled. Then Chen twisted a final dial and stepped back. It's inert for now. Then let's move, Nina said. Outside, the storm screamed louder, masking their exit. Snow swallowed their footsteps. When they reached the rocks again, Reeves glanced at her. "They'll call this a rescue," he said. She shook her head. "It's not a rescue until the ghosts go home." As they climbed, Chen's breath came in ragged bursts. "You don't understand," he said. "There's another assembly in the main building. They'll complete it by dawn. He watches every number, every movement." "Dragovich," Nina said quietly. Chen froze. "You know him." "I used to." Reeves watched her face in the dim glow of the storm. The way she said it wasn't hatred. It was something colder. "Used to?" he asked. She met his eyes. No one ever stops knowing a man like that. The storm howled, louder now, or maybe that was the mountain breathing. She looked down the slope toward the compound, where faint lights still pulsed under snow, and felt the past pressing against her ribs like a heartbeat that didn't belong to her anymore. Some wounds don't bleed, she thought, they wait. And below them, Dragovich was waiting too. She used to think fear was a sound, the click of a rifle bolt, the thud of a heartbeat in a helmet. Now she knew better. Fear was silence, the kind that stretched between falling snowflakes while a city's worth of death waited below. They'd been crawling for an hour through the frozen maze above the compound, each step another prayer to the mountain. Reeves moved ahead, reading terrain like scripture. Nina followed with Chen tethered between them on a thin cord so he wouldn't vanish in the white. No radio chatter, no light, just breath and frost. At the next ridge, Reeves raised a fist, halt. Through his scope, he counted sentries packing the main yard. 3 by the hangar, 2 by a fuel truck, 1 on the roof smoking like boredom could keep him warm. Beyond them, a larger structure bled heat through vents in the roof, too much for sleeping quarters. "The core lab," Chen whispered, teeth clicking. "That's where they'll complete the second assembly." Nina watched the glow smear against the snow. It reminded her of firelight in Bosnia, the same orange that had swallowed her team. She pushed the image away. "We go in quiet. If they see us, it's over." Reeves nodded. "North side has the least coverage. We loop wide, use the drainage trench as cover. You and I breach. Chen waits in the rocks till we clear it." "Understood," Chen said, voice barely there. He was trembling not just from cold. Guilt lived in his eyes, raw and bottomless. "You built this thing?" Reeves asked as they slid down the slope. "I designed safeguards," Chen said. "They removed them. I thought stalling would buy time." "It did," Nina said softly. "Now buy a little more by staying alive." The trench smelled of oil and ice. Every few yards, a vent spewed breath from the generator room, hot enough to steam the snow into ghosts. They timed their crawl between bursts, bodies pressed flat, hearts counting seconds. At the corner, Reeves studied the wall. Metal, not stone. A keypad blinked under a crust of frost. "Russian hardware," he muttered. "I can bypass, but it'll sing like a dying radio." "Then we do it fast," Nina said. He nodded, slipped a tool from his vest, and went to work. Sparks bit the dark. The lock gave a small mechanical sigh and unlatched. He pushed the door a few inches and froze. Voices inside. 2 men, laughing, talking about American cigarettes. Nina eased forward, eyes cold. She held up 2 fingers, then made the slicing motion. Reeves understood. He opened the door wider. They went in together, 1 shadow, 2 ghosts. 2 quiet clicks, 2 bodies down. The laughter stopped before it reached memory. The room stank of diesel and metal polish. Crates stacked to the ceiling, Cyrillic stencils spelling things she didn't want to translate. She brushed a gloved hand over one and felt the heavy vibration of lead shielding. "Storage for the uranium slugs," Chen murmured from the doorway. "Each one the size of a coin, enough to burn half a city." Nina's jaw tightened. "Then we make sure none of it leaves this mountain." Reeves scanned the upper walkway, clear. Vault will be below. Power cabling runs down the far wall. They moved toward a stairwell carved into concrete. Halfway down, a man's voice cut through the hum. "You are lost." English, but wrong, the accent thick, deliberate. Reeves raised his weapon. Nina didn't move. She knew that voice. Dragovich. He stepped from the shadows like the mountain had shaped him there. Older now, scar puckered along his neck where her bullet had once kissed him and failed to kill. His coat hung open. His hands were empty, but his confidence was. "Hello, little ghost," he said. "You came back to finish your story." Nina's breath slowed. Some stories don't end until they're rewritten. Reeves shifted, barrel steady. "Drop the act. You're done, Dragovich." The older man smiled, weary and cruel. "You must be the American who believes explosions make him righteous. Do you know what she believes, Major Reeves? She believes in hesitation. It's why she lost everything." Nina kept her aim level, "And it's why you're still breathing for now." Above them, boots clanged on steel. She glanced up. 2 men on a catwalk, rifles trained. Dragovich lifted one hand, calm. "You shoot me, they shoot you. We all die in this hole." Or, he spread his arms. "We talk." Reeves snorted. "You don't have terms worth air." But Nina saw it in Dragovich's eyes, something beyond arrogance, assurance. He'd planned this. The angles, the light, the crossfire. Just like Bosnia. "Wilson's team," she realized aloud. "You've been steering us here since the ambush." "Of course," Dragovich said. "I wanted you to come. I needed the ghost who almost killed me to see what I've built from her mercy." "Mercy?" she whispered. "You call what you did mercy?" He laughed once. "You gave me life, doctor. I used it well." The word doctor hit harder than any insult. He knew everything, her file, her disguise, even the guilt she wrapped around herself like armor. She felt her hand steady, then still. "You built a trap in a storm," she said. "You think that makes you clever, but clever men die the same as fools." He tilted his head, amused. "Then prove it." The light above them shattered. Nina had fired before she finished speaking. Darkness fell like a curtain. Reeves fired bursts into the catwalk. Screams, metal, the sound of bodies dropping. Dragovich dove sideways, shouting orders in Serbian. Smoke rolled through the stairwell, thick as fog, smelling of burnt oil and revenge. Reeves grabbed Nina's arm. "We need to move." They sprinted through gray, bullets sparking off concrete. She ducked into a service corridor, dragging Chen with her. Reeves slammed a smoke grenade against the wall, cover for their retreat. "Vaults this way," Chen gasped, pointing toward a heavy door at the end. "We can't leave it intact." Reeves cursed under his breath. "You sure we have time for demolition?" Nina's reply was calm. "We'll make time." They reached the vault door, thick, ancient steel with a keypad and a manual wheel lock. Reeves crouched, stripped wires with a knife. "Bypassing," he muttered. Nina turned to cover the hall. Bootsteps close. She pressed against the corner, waited until the first shadow moved past the doorway. 3 motions, strike, draw, silence. The old rhythm returned. The soldier fell without sound. The second followed a heartbeat later. The lock clicked. Reeves yanked the wheel. The door groaned open. Inside, the air was heavy, dampened by lead, stale with containment. Rows of canisters gleamed dull gray under emergency lights. A radiation meter blinked a slow heartbeat in the corner. Reeves pulled a satchel from his pack, setting small charges with hands that didn't shake. Shaped inward, contained the blast. "We need proof," Nina said. She grabbed a sensor chip from a console and slipped it into a leaded pouch. "Enough to confirm the material. Then we burn the rest." Reeves nodded. 2 minutes. He drew a grease pencil arrow on the wall, up and out. They turned and froze. Dragovich stood at the top of the stairs again, silhouetted by flickering red alarms. 2 men flanked him, rifles steady. His own weapon hung loose, casual. "I told you, little ghost," he said softly. "You hesitate." Reeves raised his rifle, but Dragovich lifted a hand. "Shoot, and my men turn this hall into a tomb." Nina's mind raced. She could hear the charges humming faintly behind her, the sound of time running out. Dragovich's voice was calm, almost tender. "You can't save them all, Echo. You never could. That's the curse of those who heal. They always think everyone deserves saving." Her chest tightened. He was right about Bosnia, about the faces she still saw when she tried to sleep. But something inside her shifted, a quiet refusal. "I don't need to save everyone," she said, "just the ones worth it." She fired, not at him, at the catwalk light again. Darkness swallowed them. Reeves fired blind bursts, screams echoed. Nina grabbed Chen and ran. The hallway became chaos, smoke, fire, echoes of footsteps and memory. She felt Dragovich's presence in the dark, close, too close, like gravity itself. They burst through a maintenance door into the diesel room. The air was thick with fumes. Reeves twisted a valve, spilling fuel across the floor. "We can use this." Nina nodded, aimed at the transformer and fired twice. Sparks firecaught, crawled, then roared. They ran. The explosion came behind them like an angry god, heat slamming their backs, pushing them into the snow outside. They tumbled down the slope, coughing, alive. For now. Reeves rolled to a knee, scanning. "You hit." She shook her head, chest heaving. "No, you." "Just my pride." He looked back. Flames licked through the roof vents, painting the storm orange. "That'll slow them." "Not him," she said quietly. "He'll come." He followed her gaze, Dragovich, limping through smoke, coat aflame, still moving. "Jesus," Reeves muttered, "he's made of stone." "No," Nina said, lifting her rifle. "He's made of guilt." She sighted in and hesitated. Not because she couldn't shoot, because she finally understood what she wanted more than vengeance. He needed to face what he'd done, alive. She lowered the muzzle. "We take him alive." Reeves looked at her like she'd grown another scar. "You're serious?" "Dead men end wars. Living ones end lies." Dragovich stumbled, shouting orders to men who were already fleeing. Fire chased them, smoke eating their language. Reeves keyed his mic. "Wilson, we're coming back with company." Static answered. Then Wilson's voice, ragged but alive. "Copy that, cave secure. We've got eyes on your fireworks." Nina allowed herself one breath, relief thin as ice. She looked at Dragovich disappearing into the white and whispered, "Not this time." Then she slung her rifle and started after him. The climb back to the ridge was hell, smoke, wind, debris. Chen stumbled, Reeves half carried him. Every muscle in Nina's body screamed, but she didn't stop. Ahead, Dragovich's footprints carved dark holes in the snow. When they finally reached the plateau, the fire behind them looked like dawn. The storm swallowed sound, leaving only heartbeats. Reeves leaned against a rock, panting. "You realize this is suicide?" Nina gave a thin smile. "Not if we finish fast." Below in the valley, the compound burned like the memory of a sin being erased, imperfectly, but enough. She chambered a new round, wiped the frost from her sight, and found Dragovich's shape moving toward the northern pass. "Let's end this," she said. Reeves checked his rifle, grinned through the exhaustion. "After you, Doctor." They started down into the firelight, two ghosts chasing one demon through the snow. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the noise and the mission and the years of silence, Nina Mitchell felt something unfamiliar, not forgiveness, not peace. Just the faint, stubborn rhythm of a heart learning to beat again. What drives a human being to chase another through a storm that could kill them both? Sometimes it isn't duty. Sometimes it's the need to see an ending with your own eyes. Snow hammered the ridge like nails in tin. Reeves's silhouette flickered in and out of the whiteout, a dark smear moving beside her. Behind them, the compound burned lower, orange veins through the black. Ahead, only footprints, vanishing faster than they could follow. Dragovich was losing blood, she could tell from the stagger in his stride. Yet he still climbed, still fought the mountain. The man refused to die anywhere but on his own terms. Reeves keyed his throat mic, static crackling. "Wilson, we've got your ghost in sight, heading North Ridge. Request overwatch." Only hiss answered. The storm had eaten their voices again. "Radio's dead," he said. "Then we finish this before the mountain does," Nina replied. They pressed forward, every step a fight against gravity and exhaustion. Her fingers were numb around the rifle. She couldn't feel the trigger anymore, only the memory of pressure. "I should have shot him in the vault," she thought. "Clean, simple, mercy's just another delay." But even now, she couldn't make herself wish him dead. Not yet. There was still something she needed to hear. They found him at the crest of a narrow shelf, a slash of rock overlooking the canyon. Wind tore at his coat, firelight trembling across his face. The blood on his shoulder had frozen black. He turned when he sensed them, weapon loose in his hand. "Still chasing ghosts, Doctor." His breath came in clouds. "You should have stayed below and burned with your mistakes." Reeves took position behind a boulder, rifle up. "Drop it, Dragovich, it's over." Dragovich smiled faintly. "Over, the mountain says otherwise." Then he swung the rifle toward Reeves. Two shots cracked almost together, his and Nina's. Reeves ducked. Dragovich's bullet sparked off stone. Nina's tore through his coat sleeve, spinning him sideways. He staggered, half-kneeling, teeth bared. Nina moved from cover, steps slow, deliberate. "Don't make me finish it," she said. He laughed through the pain. "You already did, 10 years ago. You just took this long to realize it." She aimed again, hands where I can see them. He didn't obey. Instead, he reached into his coat and tossed something into the snow, a small metal transmitter, its red light pulsing. Reeves cursed, "Detonator." "No," Dragovich said softly. "Insurance. You kill me, the other vault opens." Nina froze. "You're bluffing." "Try me." Reeves glanced at her. He might be telling the truth. Secondary core, Chen said it was near completion. Dragovich smiled wider. "You kill me, the world learns what your mercy built. You let me live, maybe I call it off." Nina's pulse pounded. Every choice was a failure waiting to happen. He saw it in her face. "Always the same problem, little ghost. You want to save everyone." "I want to stop you," she said. He shrugged. "Then do it, end me, and end your doctor's illusion." Her finger hovered on the trigger. Reeves whispered, "Take the shot." But something inside her rebelled. The mountain seemed to lean closer, waiting for its verdict. Not yet, she thought, not like this. A gust ripped across the ridge. She lunged forward, boots slamming the transmitter deeper into snow. Reeves, cover. Dragovich fired wild. Reeves answered with 3 controlled bursts, driving him back behind a rock. Nina dropped to one knee, yanked the device free. The red light blinked faster. "Timer, not a trigger." 60 seconds, she shouted. Reeves cursed, "Can you stop it?" "Maybe." Her gloves slipped against the casing. She ripped them off, fingers burning. Wires blue, yellow, white twisted like veins. Her breath fogged the display. Dragovich's voice came from the dark. "Cut the wrong one and your ridge becomes a sun." She ignored him. Logic, pattern, Russian fail-safe design. Her mind became still. Blue carried current, yellow armed, white synced. She cut the yellow. The light went out. Silence hit harder than any explosion. Reeves exhaled shakily. "Holy hell, Doc." Dragovich lunged from cover. His rifle smashed against hers, knocking it away. They collided, sliding in the snow, grappling on the edge of the ridge where sky met nothing. Reeves fired but couldn't risk hitting her. He sprinted closer, boots skidding. Nina drove an elbow into Dragovich's ribs, rolled, came up with a knife drawn. He caught her wrist, twisted. Pain lanced up her arm. She punched with the other hand connected with bone. He snarled, slammed her down again. They wrestled like two people who remembered every mistake the other had ever made. He pinned her, blood dripping from his mouth onto her collar. "Look at you," he hissed. "A healer pretending to be a killer. You don't even know which side you're on." "Maybe I do," she whispered. "The side that still believes there's a line." She jammed her knee up, broke his balance, rolled him off. The knife found his thigh deep. He howled, swung the rifle stock, caught her across the jaw. She fell, tasted iron. Reeves reached them, grabbed Dragovich from behind, locking his arms. "Enough." Dragovich twisted, elbowed him in the throat, staggered free again. Reeves went down gasping. Nina crawled toward her rifle. Dragovich reached for it too. Their hands hit the stock at the same time. He looked at her, eyes wild, a mixture of hatred and respect. "Only one of us walks away, little ghost." She pressed her forehead against his, whisper steady, "You're right." Her knee came up. She tore the rifle free and fired point-blank into his leg. The shot cracked the bone. He collapsed screaming. Not dead, not free. Caught exactly where she wanted him, alive and broken. She tore a tourniquet from her vest and cinched it high on his thigh, wrenching it until the scream turned to silence. "You don't get to die easy," she said. "You live long enough to answer for what you built." He spat blood. "You think the Americans will keep me alive? They need villains more than they need truth." "Then tell them both," she said. Reeves stumbled to his feet, coughing. "You done playing nurse?" She looked back at him, breathing hard. "You ever seen a confession bleed? It takes longer than a bullet." He gave a cracked grin. "Remind me never to make you angry." By the time they hauled Dragovich back toward the cave, the storm had softened from rage to exhaustion. The mountain seemed spent, breathing heavy around them. Reeves carried the radio pack. Chen's weak signal pulsed through the static again. "Team status, repeat, this is Wilson." "Commander," Reeves rasped, "we've got him, primary target alive, moving to your coordinates." Wilson's voice came back, disbelief laced with pride. "Copy that, cave secure, flares ready for evac." Dragovich laughed under his breath as they dragged him. "You think this ends with me in chains? It never ends." Nina didn't answer. The wind did that for her, whispering through the ravine like a hymn for the dead. When they reached the cave, the men inside froze. Cooper's rifle came up, then dropped when he saw the prisoner. "Holy Commander, you're not gonna believe this." Wilson stepped forward, face hard with exhaustion. His eyes met Dragovich's, then shifted to Nina. "You went back," he said simply, "and you came out with the devil himself." "Devils die easy," she said. "We're not done yet." Reeves eased Dragovich onto the ground. Blood soaked through the snow beneath him, steaming. Chen knelt nearby, checking the bandage on Jackson's chest. "We've got one shot at extraction," Wilson said. "Weather windows closing. If air doesn't find us now, we dig graves in the morning." Nina keyed the emergency beacon. Its green light blinked weakly through static snow. "They'll see us," she said, half to herself. Dragovich coughed. "They'll see nothing. Storm eats all signals." Reeves kicked him lightly. "You underestimate American stubbornness." Wilson pulled Nina aside. "You okay?" She nodded. "Alive, that's enough." He looked at her rifle, then at her face. "You had the shot, didn't you?" "Yes." "And you didn't take it." She met his eyes. "Some men don't deserve death. They deserve remembering." He studied her for a long time, then nodded. "Maybe that's worse." Hours bled into a dull gray dawn. The storm eased at last. Smoke from the ruined compound twisted into the morning light. Then sound, faint at first then louder, rotor blades. The cave erupted in motion. Men grabbed gear, signaled with flares. The medevac bird broke through the cloud deck, swaying in crosswinds, landing like a ghost given shape. Wilson shouted over the roar, "Load the wounded first." Cooper and Thompson carried Jackson out on a stretcher. Chen followed, blinking against the snow glare. Reeves and Nina half-lifted Dragovich between them. He turned his head toward her as they reached the chopper. "You think this makes you clean?" "No," she said, "just finished." He smiled almost kindly. "They'll forget the doctor, they'll remember the assassin." She tightened her grip on his harness. "Then you never knew doctors." They shoved him aboard. Reeves climbed in after, securing him to the stretcher frame. Wilson signaled the pilot. The blades bit harder, rising. Nina looked once more at the mountains. The fire was dying. The world was still. For the first time in years, she felt something close to quiet inside. Reeves leaned from the cabin door. "You coming?" She hesitated only a second. "Yeah," she said, "but next time you're the one dragging the villain." He grinned. "Deal." She climbed in, the doors slammed, and the helicopter lifted into a sky scraped raw by wind. The ridge fell away below them, black rock, white snow, and one trail of footprints leading nowhere. As the mountain disappeared beneath clouds, Nina closed her eyes. The sound of rotors became the sound of waves, of rain, of years she'd lost. She saw Bosnia again, her team, their laughter, the fire. But this time the memory didn't own her. It just stayed. Reeves tapped her shoulder, voice soft through the headset. "You did good, Doctor." She gave him a tired smile. "You too, Major." He leaned back, eyes on the horizon. "You think this ends now?" "No," she said, "but tonight the river moved." And for a brief, fragile moment, the ghost inside her finally rested. The helicopter rattled like a tin heartbeat in the thin air. Below, the mountains disappeared into cloud, leaving only ghosts in the snow. Nina sat wedged between stretchers, Jackson pale but breathing, Chen shivering under a thermal blanket, Dragovich strapped down and silent. Reeves sat across from her, one hand on a cargo strap, the other checking his rifle as if habit alone kept him sane. Every few seconds, the bird jolted in turbulence. Each jolt sent a ripple through her chest, not fear exactly, but that strange stillness that comes when adrenaline begins to fade. For a moment, there was only the mechanical thrum of rotors and the smell of fuel. Then Dragovich spoke. "You could have killed me," he rasped. "Why didn't you?" Nina didn't answer. She checked Jackson's pulse instead, steady. He coughed a wet laugh. "Mercy again, you never learn." Her eyes flicked to him, not anger, not pity, something colder. "Mercy isn't weakness," she said quietly. "It's memory." "Of what?" "Of who we used to be, before men like you made us forget." He smiled, showing blood between his teeth. "You think you're different, but you and I, we build the same kind of monsters." Reeves looked up. "Keep talking, and I'll test how well you can breathe through a broken rib." Dragovich just closed his eyes, satisfied. He'd planted the words, now he could rest. The pilot's voice cracked through the headset. "Approaching Bagram, 30 mics." Reeves leaned toward her. "Once we land, command takes custody. Sullivan'll want your report." "Then they'll get it," she said. "You trust them with this?" She looked out the small window, endless gray stretching forever. "Trust is a luxury we ran out of somewhere over Bosnia." He nodded, understanding without liking it. Bagram looked like a wound stitched with lights. Flood lamps burned through the snow, painting everything the color of bone. When the helicopter touched down, the world exploded in motion, medics, soldiers, shouting, stretchers carried into the storm of sound and heat. Nina climbed out last, boots sinking into wet slush. She helped Reeves unload Dragovich, whose eyes darted everywhere, memorizing faces, exits, weaknesses. Even half-dead, the man thought like a predator. An officer in an MP armband stepped forward. "We'll take the prisoner." Reeves's grip tightened on the stretcher. "You lose him, and half this base burns before sunrise." The officer bristled. "We're not amateurs, Major." Nina stepped between them. "He's not talking tonight. Keep him isolated, no visitors, no electronics within 20 feet. The officer hesitated, then nodded. Understood, ma'am. She turned away before Dragovich could say anything else. The words would just rot if she let them. Reeves followed her toward the medical bay. You okay? I'm tired, she said. Not the kind sleep fixes. The infirmary smelled like antiseptic and overbrewed coffee. Jackson lay under a halo of monitors, chest rising evenly. Martinez was awake, complaining about oatmeal. Chen sat wrapped in a blanket, staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. Nina checked vitals, adjusted drips, gave quiet orders to the nurses. She didn't speak about what had happened in the mountains. She just worked methodical, deliberate, like healing could erase killing. When she finally stepped outside, the snow had turned to rain, thin, cold, persistent. She found a sink in an empty side room and washed her hands until the water ran red, then clear, then hot. She watched the steam blur her reflection in the mirror. The ghost in the glass stared back. That was when the door opened behind her. Sullivan's reflection appeared in the mirror, older than she remembered, his jaw tight, coat collar wet. He didn't say her name, he just said, "You did it." Her voice was quiet. We did what we had to. He stepped closer. Dragovich is alive, that's unexpected. It was necessary. For justice. For proof. He studied her in silence. You know what happens next, don't you? She turned off the faucet. Hearings, clearances, men who have never seen blood arguing about how it was spilled. He almost smiled. You always did see straight through the paperwork. She leaned against the counter. What will they say? That a field medic saved a SEAL team. That a rogue sniper wasn't real. That a war criminal was captured through cooperation. And you? I'll say thank you, he said simply, and sorry. For what? For making you remember what you tried to forget. She looked down at her hands, clean now, trembling slightly. I thought I could bury Echo. You can't bury what you are, he said gently, but you can choose what to do with it. Her laugh was soft, tired. So what am I now, Colonel, doctor, or weapon? Both, he said. That's what scares them. He placed a small envelope on the counter beside her, sealed, unmarked. This came through classified channels, intel from the wreckage, coordinates, names. There's more to Dragovich's network. She didn't touch it, and you want me to finish the job. I want you to choose, he said. This time no orders, just truth. She looked at the envelope, then at her own reflection again. I'll think about it. You already are, he said, and left her alone with the rain. Hours later, she found Reeves in the hangar bay. He was leaning against a fuel drum, bruised and half asleep, drinking coffee that had given up on being coffee. You look like hell, she said. He grinned. Hell looks better in daylight. She joined him, took the spare cup he offered. The warmth stung her palms. Chen's stable, she said. Jackson too. Good, Reeves said. Means we did something right. Did we? She asked quietly. He looked at her, then shrugged. We're still breathing. That's right enough for now. Silence stretched between them, not awkward, just heavy. The kind that happens after you've both seen the same impossible thing and survived it. He finally asked, You ever regret it? Which part? Coming back to this life. She thought for a moment. Regret, a luxury too. I traded it for precision. He nodded as if he'd expected that. They'll give you a medal for this. She smiled faintly. Then they can give it to the pilot who flew through that storm. I'm done collecting ghosts. Reeves chuckled. You know they don't have a ribbon for what you did. What's that? The shot you took and the one you didn't. She didn't reply. The words sat in the air like a heartbeat. He pushed off the drum. Get some rest, doctor. We'll both pretend the world's clean in the morning. She watched him walk away, his shadow stretching long across the wet floor, and wondered if pretending was the closest anyone ever got to peace. By dawn, the base had turned to gray steel under gray sky. Reporters would never see it, and history would never write it right. But somewhere between classified lines and unmarked graves, a kind of truth had survived. Wilson met her outside the infirmary, his face drawn but calm. "They're talking about commendations," he said. "You'll hate it." "I already do," she said. He chuckled. "You know, when Sullivan forced you onto my team, I thought you were a liability." "You weren't wrong." "Maybe not," he said, "but I was blind." She met his gaze. Blind to what? To what quiet looks like when it's strong. That hit deeper than praise. She looked away, blinking against the wind. "How are the others?" "Cooper's writing letters home. Thompson's complaining about the food. Martinez wants to name his next kid after you." She smiled, small, real. "Tell him to wait until she's born before he regrets it." Wilson laughed, the sound rough with fatigue. "I'll tell him." They stood in silence for a while, watching a transport jet climb into the gray. It vanished fast, swallowed by weather. Finally Wilson said, "You know this isn't over." "I know," she said. "But for what it's worth, Doctor, I'm glad it was you." She nodded once. "So am I." He offered his hand. She took it, not as commander and subordinate, but as two people who had seen too much and still managed to keep some piece of themselves human. That night, alone in her quarters, Nina sat on her bunk with Sullivan's envelope on her lap. She hadn't opened it. She didn't want to, but she couldn't make herself throw it away either. She thought of the ridge, the snow, the fire, the sound of Dragovich's scream. She thought of her father's voice telling her that accuracy was a gift, but wisdom was choosing when to use it. "I used it," she thought, "just not the way anyone expected." She looked down at her hands again, the same hands that had pulled a trigger and stopped a wound, sometimes in the same heartbeat. Maybe that was the point. Maybe balance wasn't about peace. Maybe it was about holding both sides without letting either win. Outside, the wind picked up again, brushing against the tent canvas like fingertips. Somewhere, a generator coughed, steadying into rhythm. Life, imperfect but stubborn. She lay back, eyes open to the ceiling, whispering to no one. "I carried them as far as I could, and farther than I wanted. That's enough for tonight." And for the first time in years, when she closed her eyes, the ghosts didn't argue. They just stood beside her, quiet, finally listening. What do you do when silence starts feeling heavier than gunfire? Nina had asked herself that question every morning since the extraction. The war hadn't ended. It had just moved indoors, into briefing rooms and cold corridors where fluorescent lights hummed like judgment. Dragovich was alive, but barely. They kept him in an isolation cell 3 levels beneath Bagram's command center, concrete, steel, and shadows. Interrogators rotated through him like shifts at a factory, each one leaving more frustrated than the last. He spoke in riddles, stories, half-truths that sounded too logical to dismiss. She wasn't supposed to see him again, but she did. Not out of duty, out of something quieter. A need to understand what survived inside men like him and what didn't. The guard at the cell block knew her by now. "5 minutes, ma'am," he said. She nodded. "I won't need that long." The door hissed open. The air inside was thick with disinfectant and stale breath. Dragovich sat chained at the table, his legs still bandaged, his eyes fever-bright. "You look tired," he said. "I've been busy keeping you alive," she replied. "Then we both failed. I don't feel alive." "You feel guilt," she said. "That's close enough." He smiled faintly. "Guilt? No, doctor, guilt is for the naive. What I feel is inevitability." She leaned against the wall. "Then tell me why. Why build something you knew couldn't be controlled?" He tilted his head. "Because control is a myth. You of all people should know that. You tried to control death. I tried to control fear. We both failed." She stepped closer. "You killed hundreds." I educated thousands. You call that education? He nodded. Every civilization must see its own shadow before it believes in light. She looked at him, really looked. The once invincible face had thinned to bone and scars, but his conviction remained, that cold fire that refused to admit he was wrong. You think this philosophy saves you? She asked quietly. It doesn't need to save me, he said. It just needs to outlive me. Her jaw tightened. Then it dies with you. He smiled again, slow and cruel. You think you killed the idea on that ridge. You just made it a story, and stories travel farther than bullets. That line hit harder than she expected. She wanted to argue, but she couldn't. He wasn't wrong. Every secret mission ended up as someone else's myth. She turned to leave. You're not a story worth telling. He called after her, then stop remembering me. But she couldn't. Back upstairs, the world returned to routine, reports, debriefings, silence disguised as paperwork. Reeves sat across from her in the operations tent, uniform clean, face rough from too many nights without real rest. They'll bury this, he said. They always do. Dragovich won't last. Too many ghosts want him gone. I know, she said softly. So why keep him breathing? Because someone has to see what comes next. He frowned. You're starting to sound like him. No, she said. I'm starting to understand why he thought he couldn't lose. Reeves leaned back, studying her. You ever wonder what happens after people like us stop fighting? All the time. And I haven't figured out if we stop, or if the fight just changes shape. He smiled faintly. That's the most depressing kind of truth I've heard all week. Before she could reply, Wilson stepped in, dropping a folder on the table. Orders, he said. Sullivan's pulling us out. HQ wants statements, not soldiers. Reeves groaned. Perfect. Nothing says thank you for almost dying like bureaucracy. Wilson ignored him, looking at Nina. You'll be flown to Langley first. Medical eval, psych review, full debrief. You good with that? I'll manage, she said. He hesitated. You did good out there. However they spin it, remember that. She gave him a tired smile. I'll remember the ridge, not the report. The flight to Langley was quiet. Just her, Reeves, and silence thick enough to feel alive. The storm outside the window looked like static, endless and cold. Halfway through, Reeves asked without looking up, You ever think about going home? She didn't answer at first. I don't know where that is anymore. He nodded. Yeah, me neither. When they landed, gray light washed everything clean of color. Headquarters looked sterile, glass, stone, flags pretending meaning. The kind of place where truth was filtered through 15 people before it became official. They split at the tarmac. Reeves gave her a salute that wasn't regulation. See you on the other side, doctor. She returned it, if there is one. The debriefing room was small and cold, 2 walls mirrored, 1 camera blinking like an unblinking eye. Colonel Sullivan sat across from her, a stack of forms untouched. He didn't start with questions. He started with silence. Finally he said, You saw him again. Yes. Why? To understand what we almost became. He studied her. You think we're close to men like him. I think the line is thinner than we want to believe. He nodded slowly. You're not wrong. The committee's calling the mission a success. And you? I call it unfinished. He reached into his briefcase, pulled out a thin file, photos, schematics, a coded map. Dragovich's network was bigger than we thought. Satellite intel confirms movement near the Black Sea. Same text signatures as the mountain compound. So it never ended, she said. It never does, he replied. But this time it's not your mission. She looked up sharply. Why not? Because they're retiring you, Nina, officially. You're cleared, decorated, and done. She stared at him. I didn't ask for rest. No, he said softly, but you need it. Her voice hardened. You said I could choose. I did, he said, and I'm asking you to choose life, not war. She didn't speak. The silence between them felt heavier than any gunfire she'd ever heard. Finally, she stood. You ever wonder what happens when soldiers stop believing their orders mean anything? All the time, he said. That's when they start believing in themselves instead. That's when they become dangerous. She gave a thin smile. Then maybe that's what I'll be. That night she walked through the city in civilian clothes, jeans, jacket, hair down, invisible. The cold here was different, softer, civilized, the kind that didn't kill, just reminded you were alive. She found a diner still open and ordered black coffee. The waitress smiled like kindness was cheap again. For a while she just sat there, listening to the hum of neon, the clatter of plates, the world pretending nothing burned. Her phone buzzed once, unknown number, a message. It moves again. See. Chen, the scientist, the man who'd seen too much and still wanted to make things right. Her hand tightened around the cup. The coffee rippled. She looked outside at the rain slicking across glass and realized something. Peace wasn't a place you found. It was a place you built and then protected over and over until it stopped feeling fragile. She deleted the message. Then, after a long pause, she undeleted it. Some part of her still believed she could be both, the doctor who healed, and the ghost who watched from the ridge when no one else could. Weeks passed. Official commendations came and went, photos, medals, words that meant less each time someone repeated them. Her name appeared in a few anonymous reports, erased in others. The story was rewritten, sanitized, turned into something the public could digest. But the ridge remained. The fire, the faces, they didn't fade, they sharpened. Sometimes, late at night, she'd wake to the sound of wind against the windows and think it was gunfire. Then she'd realize it was just the world breathing, loud, imperfect, alive. And she'd whisper to the dark, I'm still here. No answer came, but maybe that was enough. One evening she walked to the river near the edge of the city. The sky was orange with distant lights, water black and glassy. She dropped a small coin into it, an old field token, the kind they gave medics during Bosnia. It vanished with a soft splash. Behind her, someone spoke. You really think throwing metal in water fixes ghosts? She turned. Reeves stood there, coat wet, hands in pockets, that same tired half-grin. You followed me, she asked. Coincidence, he said. Or maybe I just needed to see if you were real. She laughed quietly. I'm not sure anymore. He stepped closer. They called me in for another op, East Sector, not your kind of work, just cleanup. You going? He nodded, always do. Then don't die stupid. He smiled, that's the plan. He hesitated, then handed her a small envelope, familiar, sealed, unmarked. From Sullivan, he said you'd know what to do. She took it without opening it. Maybe someday, she said. Reeves looked at her for a long time, then said softly, You ever gonna stop looking over your shoulder? Only when it's not watching back. He nodded, turned to leave. Take care, doctor. She watched him go, the rain swallowing his footsteps. She looked down at the envelope again, heavy, silent, full of choices. Then she put it in her pocket and walked away from the river. Behind her, the coin she'd thrown caught one last glint of light before the current carried it somewhere she couldn't follow. And the voiceover faded like the wind whispering through snow. Peace isn't the absence of ghosts. It's learning to walk beside them and not lose your way. Sometimes silence doesn't mean peace. Sometimes it's just the sound of the next war catching its breath. Nina Mitchell had been trying to live quietly. She worked at a clinic outside D.C., treating soldiers who still flinched at car doors and thunder. She moved through the days like a shadow, pretending to be human, good coffee, soft music, no weapons. But one morning the illusion cracked. She walked in early, rain still on her jacket when her receptionist handed her an envelope, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside, a single Polaroid photo. Chen, in a dim room, eyes bound, a blurred hand holding a note beside him that read. He kept moving. She froze, the hallway seemed to tilt. The envelope smelled faintly of diesel and old paper. And on the back of the photo, written in neat block letters, were coordinates. Black Sea region, Bulgaria, the same network Sullivan had mentioned weeks before. Her pulse steadied, not racing, not panicked, just focused. Because she knew what this meant. Someone was still finishing Dragovich's work, and they wanted her to know it. That night, she drove into the city. No destination, just motion. She found herself in the old parking structure near Langley where Reeves had taught her to fix a rifle blindfolded. The smell of oil and concrete hit her like memory. She called Sullivan's secure line. It didn't connect. The second call did. His voice came through, older, rasped, tired. "I was expecting this sooner," he said. "You knew," she said quietly. "I suspected," he admitted. Chen disappeared from the safe house 10 days ago. No breach alarms, no forced entry. He walked out. "He didn't walk anywhere," she said. "He was taken." "That's likely," Sullivan said. "But the agency's hands are tied. We can't operate officially inside Bulgaria. So we let him die. We wait," he said, "see what they want." Her voice hardened. "You already know what they want." There was silence. Then he said softly, "You're out, Nina. Don't step back in. Whatever you think you owe him, you've paid." "I owe him a chance," she said. "That's how it starts again." She ended the call. For a long moment she sat in the car, engine idling, rain smearing the windshield. Then she opened the glove box. The sidearm was still there, old, oiled, silent. She stared at it, then closed the glove box again. Not yet. 2 days later, Reeves found her. She didn't ask how. He always had a way of showing up when the story started turning dark. He slid into the seat across from her in a diner off Route 1, same tired grin, same jacket that had seen too much. "You got the photo," he said. "Did you?" He nodded. "Sullivan briefed me. They want it quiet, off books. They're sending a team." "Whose team?" He hesitated. "Not ours." She stared at him, meaning. "Meaning they'll clean up, not rescue. Anyone in that photo's already collateral." Her jaw tightened. "Then we go first." He sighed. "You know this ends one of 2 ways. Then let's make it the right one." He smiled slightly. "You haven't changed." "Neither have you," she said. "You just hide it better." They flew out that night under different names. Freight flight to Istanbul, then overland north. The kind of trip that felt like falling back into an old dream, one filled with checkpoints, shadows, and the hum of engines carrying secrets. Bulgaria smelled of rain and coal. Gray sky, gray roads, gray faces. Perfect camouflage for people like them. They found the compound 2 days later, an abandoned observatory near the coast, perched like a scar above black water. Satellite dishes rusted into the ground, but the generator hum was new. Inside, someone had turned science into silence again. Through her scope, Nina saw guards, 2 on the roof, 3 near the entrance. Movement behind windows. She whispered, "No insignia, civilians." Reeves replied, "Mercs, Russian ex-contractors probably." Her eyes caught something else, a shadow behind frosted glass, a limp shape strapped to a chair. Chen. Her breath caught. "He's alive." "Maybe not for long," Reeves said. "Your call, doctor." She studied the compound, calculating routes, timings, exits. The part of her that had been dormant since Afghanistan stirred awake, sharp, cold, clear. The ghost was breathing again. "We go at 2300, she said. "No alarms, no mistakes." Reeves grinned. "Never thought I'd miss your bedtime orders." The wind off the sea howled as they moved in low crawl across the grass, slow steps under moonlight broken by clouds. She wore black, face smeared with ash, rifle tight against her chest. Her body remembered every muscle, every measure. At the fence, Reeves cut through with a quiet hiss of metal. They slipped inside, ghosts again. Two guards by the side door, cigarettes glowing red. She waited for the exhale, then fired two suppressed shots. The sound barely rose above the wind. They entered through maintenance narrow hall, pipes dripping salt water. The air stank of rust and something worse, burnt circuits, sterilized chemicals. She led Reeves covering. One door had light under it, voices, Slavic, angry. She opened it fast, low, 2 rounds before they could stand. Clean, quiet. They moved deeper, past storage crates, computer racks humming faintly. She spotted the lab, a glass partition with the same logo Dragovich used, a stylized spiral half erased. And there, strapped to a chair under harsh light, was Chen. Barefoot, eyes unfocused, breathing shallow. She was through the door before Reeves could stop her. Chen. His head jerked weak. Nina. It's me, you're okay. He tried to speak, voice cracking. They moved it. Moved what? He coughed. The core, data's not here. They're building the transmitter on a ship, Black Sea. It's. The rest vanished in static as a voice echoed behind her. Always the healer, always too late. She turned, gun up. A man stood in the doorway, tall, wearing Dragovich's insignia on his sleeve. But not him. Younger, sharper, the kind of face that hadn't yet learned regret. I was told the ghost might come, he said. My father would be proud. Her stomach turned. Your father. He nodded once. Colonel Dragovich was a visionary. I'm just continuing his thesis. Reeves fired. The shot cracked the glass, sent the man diving behind a console. Sparks erupted. Alarms screamed. Guess we lost quiet, Reeves muttered. Nina dragged Chen toward cover. Can you walk? He nodded weakly. I can try. The son's voice echoed through the room, amplified by the intercom. You can't kill a legacy, doctor. You can only delay it. She fired back, bullets shattering monitors. Then I'll delay it forever. They fought their way out, controlled bursts, smoke motion. Reeves moved like clockwork, covering every angle. Chen stumbled but kept up. The lab burned behind them, data drives melting in fire. At the door, Reeves shouted, truck outside. They burst through, air thick with salt and flame. A transport truck idled near the fence. Reeves hot-wired it in seconds. She shoved Chen in, climbed behind him, eyes still on the burning building. The younger Dragovich stepped into the doorway, rifle raised, fire reflecting in his eyes. She sighted him through her scope. Exhale, hold, break. The shot hit him in the shoulder, spinning him back into the flames. Not fatal, not meant to be. As they drove off, Reeves shouted over the engine, you could have ended it. She stared ahead. No, I just made sure he remembers who she was. By dawn, they reached the coast, the Black Sea flat and endless. The horizon glowed with the faint outline of ships. Chen lay in the back seat, shivering but alive. Reeves pulled over near an old pier. We call it in. Nina nodded, opening a secure line. Sullivan, this is Mitchell. Extraction needed. 2 friendly, 1 recovered asset. Static, then Sullivan's voice. Copy, air inbound. What about the site? Compromised, data destroyed. Secondary threat neutralized. Confirmed. She looked out at the sea, remembering the young man's face, a reflection of his father's arrogance, his certainty. Confirmed, she said. But the way her voice faltered told her it wasn't over. They waited in silence until the sound of rotors reached them again, distant, growing. The sky brightened, gulls wheeling low over gray water. Reeves glanced at her. You did what you had to, Doc, don't overthink it. She smiled faintly. You ever tell a ghost not to overthink? He grinned, fair point. The helicopter appeared low and fast. Wind whipped through their hair as it hovered over the pier. She helped Chen aboard first, then turned to Reeves. "You coming?" He shook his head. "Someone has to clean the trail, make it look like an accident." She stared at him. "That's suicide." "Yeah," he said softly, "but it's the right kind." Before she could argue, he pressed something into her hand, a worn bullet casing, polished to shine. "Keep it," he said, "in case you forget what quiet costs." She wanted to tell him he didn't need to die to prove anything. But the look in his eyes stopped her. Some men make peace only by walking toward the fire, not away from it. The helicopter lifted. She watched him grow smaller standing on that cracked pier, rifle in hand, watching the sea like it still owed him answers. As the coastline faded, Nina looked down at the casing in her palm, cold, perfect, final. Below her, the world moved on, pretending nothing was burning. And she thought maybe Dragovich had been right about one thing. Stories do travel farther than bullets. But the ending is still written by the ones who survive long enough to tell it. Her voice, soft, steady, carried through the hum of the engines. They say the past never dies. But maybe it doesn't have to. Maybe it just waits for someone brave enough to face it and walk away alive. How do you know when it's finally over? Not the mission. Not the war. The noise inside. For weeks after Bulgaria, Nina waited for word that Reeves had made it out. None came. The agency said there was no confirmation of survival. That was their way of saying he's gone. She didn't hold a funeral. There was no body, no flag, no coordinates. Just silence, the kind he'd once joked was the only thing louder than war. She kept the bullet casing he'd given her on her desk. It was smooth now, worn from her thumb tracing it night after night. Some people called it coping. She called it remembering. Because remembering was all she had left. Chen recovered slowly. The nightmares came harder than the pain, but he survived. He left for Zurich under a new name, promising to stay away from anything that hummed, glowed, or could end civilizations. Before he left, he told her something she couldn't forget. "They'll come for you," he said quietly. "Not to punish you, to use you. You've become the story now, Nina. The ghost people whisper about in corridors, the woman who does miss." She smiled without humor. Ghosts don't live long enough to get used. He looked at her, eyes tired, then stopped living like one. She didn't answer because she didn't know how. 3 months later, the world moved again. A Russian cargo vessel exploded in the Black Sea, cause unknown. Satellite images showed fragments scattered for miles, radiation sensors spiking then dropping. Official channels blamed faulty storage. Unofficially, Sullivan called her. "Your friend finished what you started," he said over the secure line. Her breath caught. "Reeves." "Yes," Sullivan said quietly. "He wired the ship himself, transmitted proof before detonation, saved 1,000 cities, cost him one life." She didn't speak. The line hummed. She could almost hear Reeves's voice beneath it, that rough humor, the calm in his defiance. He had gone the way he lived, loud enough for history, quiet enough for dignity. Sullivan's voice softened. "He made it clean, Nina. The fire didn't touch him, you should know that." "Was it quick?" she asked. "Yes." But she could hear the lie, and maybe that was mercy too. When the call ended, she sat alone for a long time, staring at the casing on her desk. It glinted under the lamplight, just brass, just metal, but it felt heavier now. Like it had inherited the weight of every shot she'd ever taken, and every one she hadn't. Days turned to months. She returned to the clinic, quieter this time. No one there knew what she'd done. To them, she was just Dr. Mitchell, calm hands, steady eyes, the woman who never raised her voice. The patients called her Doc Ghost, half affection, half mystery. Sometimes she caught her reflection in the surgical lamp, the faint scar at her temple, the way her gaze drifted before locking again. She wondered what Reeves would have said if he could see her now. Probably something stupid, she thought. Something that made me angry, just to remind me I was still human. That thought made her smile, the first real one in months. But peace, like always, never lasted long. It came on a gray morning, the kind that smelled like snow before it arrived. She was checking supplies when the receptionist buzzed her. "There's someone here to see you, Dr. Mitchell." She frowned. "I don't have appointments today." "He says you'll want to hear what he has to say." The voice that entered wasn't a patient's. It was calm, military, controlled. A man in a dark coat, eyes unreadable. He placed a tablet on her desk face down. "Ma'am," he said, "I'm not here officially, but you need to see this." He flipped the tablet. A video played, grainy, time-stamped 2 weeks ago. A man walking along a pier, rifle slung low, ocean behind him. Reeves. Alive. She froze. The footage showed him talking to someone too far to hear words but close enough to recognize gestures. Then the camera jerked, static flared, and the feed ended. The man said quietly, intercepted by NATO surveillance, "Coordinates are in the file. We're not cleared to move on it." "Why show me?" she asked. "Because he wasn't supposed to survive," the man said. "And because the person he met, you won't like who it was." He tapped the screen again, showing a still frame. A silhouette, tall, scarred, half hidden by mist. Dragovich's son. Her heart stilled. "You're telling me he's alive too?" "Yes, and he's building again." She stared at the image, then at the man. "What do you want from me?" He hesitated. "Nothing. But Sullivan said if anyone could finish this without starting a war, it'd be you." She exhaled slowly. "Where?" "Odessa, abandoned shipyard. You didn't get that from me." When he left, the clinic felt smaller, colder, too clean for what she was about to do. She packed that night, no medals, no files. Just her medical kit, her rifle, and the bullet casing Reeves had given her. No goodbyes. Ghosts don't say goodbye. Odessa was winter again, steel sky, black sea, gulls screaming like something ancient. She moved alone, blending into the docks. The air smelled of oil and salt and old blood. The shipyard was half submerged, cranes frozen mid-collapse. At its heart, a warehouse glowing faintly from within. She slipped through shadows, every sense awake. The rhythm of her heart matched the wind, steady, patient. Inside, she found what she expected. Servers, crates, the spiral logo reborn. And at the center, a figure hunched over a console. "Step away," she said. He turned slowly. Dragovich's son, pale, exhausted, eyes sharp with fanatic calm. "You came," he said. "I wondered if the legend was true." "I'm not a legend," she said. "Just unfinished business." He gestured toward the screens. "You destroyed our last site, but you didn't kill the idea. The signal lives. You can't stop it." She raised her rifle. "Watch me." He smiled faintly. "You'll shoot me, like you did my father." Her finger rested on the trigger. "Your father wanted to burn the world to prove it existed. What do you want?" "I want to finish what he started, to prove humanity needs control." She shook her head. "No, you just want to matter." He flinched barely, but she saw it. The truth hit harder than a bullet. "I know what it's like," she said quietly, "to live for something you hate because it's all you have left." He laughed once. "You think words save anyone?" "No," she said, "but sometimes silence does." She squeezed the trigger, one clean shot. Not at him. At the console behind him. The screen shattered, sparks filled the room, alarms screamed, power died. He spun, shouting, "You destroyed it." "No," she said, lowering the rifle. "I set it free." The servers caught fire. Flames licked through wires, eating years of work in seconds. He lunged at her, desperate, unarmed. She sidestepped, slammed him into the railing, pinned him. "End it," he hissed, "like you ended him." She looked at him, this boy wearing his father's ghost like armor, and saw herself, saw what she'd almost become. "No," she said softly, "that's not who I am anymore." Then she released him. The floor beneath him groaned, metal tearing from the heat. He stumbled, caught nothing, fell into the fire below. She turned away before the sound reached her. Outside, the warehouse burned. The sea reflected it, orange and gold, waves swallowing the light. She stood there, rifle hanging loose, the casing warm in her palm. A voice came through her comm, Sullivan's, faint, uncertain. "Mitchell, do you copy? We're seeing smoke." "I copy," she said. "It's done." "Status." She watched the fire collapse into itself, a dying sun. "Ghost retired," she said quietly. There was a pause. Understood. The line went dead. She stayed until the flames sank to embers. Then she walked toward the pier. The air smelled of salt and endings. For the first time, she didn't look over her shoulder. At the water's edge, she knelt and placed the bullet casing down on the wood. It gleamed once under the dying firelight. "For you," she whispered, "for every shot we never took." She watched it roll, fall, and vanish into the black water, same as the coin she'd thrown months ago. Same quiet surrender. Then she straightened, wind tugging at her hair, the dawn breaking gray and silver over the horizon. And for the first time since Bosnia, she felt weightless. Not because the ghosts were gone, because she'd finally stopped running from them. Her voice carried through the final hum of the wind, quiet, resolute, human. "They said ghosts fade when the war ends. But some of us aren't meant to fade. We're meant to remember. To stand on the ridge, rifle in hand, and watch the sun rise over everything we couldn't save. And still believe it was worth trying. Because sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts."